to the live stream by hitting that like button. The YouTube algorithm will pick up the video, spread it around for more people to join in. It's always more fun to have these videos going live with more comments and questions to keep the conversation going. Today we're going to be talking about how the Federal Reserve is backing off on their interest rate cuts, or at least this is what the financial markets are predicting. They are losing hope that there is going to be some sort of interest rate cutting coming from the Federal Reserve going into the future. And this is something that I have pretty much been expecting the whole time. Oh, let me get rid of the logo here. YouTube hates logos too, so let me cover that up. It's one of the reasons why I cover that up, is just so we can keep the algorithms blocking of video spreading as much as possible. You know, that's really like, the algorithm hates bad words, hateful comments, you know, I don't know, conspiratorial things. It's really about advertising is what it comes down to. The advertisers out there don't want to pay for video or pay for advertising on videos that don't meet their qualifications or whatever. And usually it's not that hard to maintain that sort of level. But, you know, we just try and maintain it for the best we can here. Okay, let's talk about economics. Interest rate cuts. This is something that I think a lot of people misunderstand about how these interest rate cuts are affecting the economy, because a lot of people think about elevated interest rates and think this is a painful experience. They are causing pain. If we had lesser interest rates, we wouldn't be experiencing the pain. And I think this is a very misunderstood concept out there, because really when you think about the Federal Reserve trying to stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates, what they are saying is that the economy is in bad shape. And this is where I feel that a lot of people just misunderstand it to begin with. They're saying, no, they're creating pain. What they are doing is not creating pain, but trying to maintain a certain level of ability to then try and stimulate the economy for when things are painful. Does that kind of make sense? Now, I think really the way to look at it is employment, right? If there is low unemployment, then that's a good sign for the Federal Reserve. It may not necessarily be a good sign for us. Like, we may say, no, the wages aren't enough, everything's too expensive, all this list of stuff that make it bad. And that's true. But the Federal Reserve isn't mandated to do housing market elevations or making it more affordable or any of that stuff. That's not, like, the Fed is not there for political reasons, although a lot of people would disagree with that. The Federal Reserve is to maintain two things. They're mandated to keep full employment, whatever that's supposed to be, whatever you want to define that as. I mean, the Federal Reserve defines it in a particular way that doesn't seem to be necessarily appropriate for understanding like the real issues that are taking place with the jobs out there. Ultimately, there is so many people out there that are not working, that are not in the workforce, that are not counted as unemployed, right? The unemployment insurance, people who are collecting unemployment, that's what they end up looking at, and that's not a real number as far as giving a telling sign of what's taking place within the economy. However, if full employment is something that they are trying to maintain, and they are the ones who are coming up with the numbers to say, hey, we have achieved that full employment, or, you know, the jobs number are in a line with monetary policy, then they have the room to try and stimulate the economy so long as they have elevated interest rates. So when jobs are lost, and they need to stimulate the economy to get the employment running again, it's the lowering of interest rates that then gets companies out there borrowing money to then go and start hiring people, along with buying equipment, expanding their operations. And this is how the Federal Reserve would typically try to stimulate the economy, is that lowering of interest rates to get the employment up, right? Usually you have a rise in unemployment, and that would get them to go out there. So as people are anticipating the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates, what I don't think that they are anticipating is a rise in unemployment, right? The painful experience that would force the Federal Reserve into lowering the interest rates. So as people get like stuck in hopium with the belief that there is going to be lower interest rates going into the future to make borrowing costs less so that you may get that opportunity to go out there and buy a house, what they are not taking is the reverse side of that, which says that the economy is in very bad shape, and that's the reason why the Federal Reserve is lowering rates. Okay, so now let's take it back just a little bit and look at it for the monetary policy strategy side of things, because the Federal Reserve is moving to what they refer to as neutral, right? And now neutral is when they are neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. They're neutral with the Fed funds rate. The only problem is nobody knows exactly where neutral is. There's estimates of where neutral is, but nobody can just like fire up a computer program and say, boom, that's neutral, right? They have estimates of what they refer to as R star, and there's a few different estimates out there on where R star is, but really we are above neutral, right? And this is where the Federal Reserve is in a restrictive monetary policy. A lot of times people don't look at it that way. They think that the Federal Reserve is still printing money and going into, inflationary pressures and stuff like that. It's quite the opposite. The Federal Reserve is reeling in the money supply. They are actually pulling money out of the system. This is quantitative tightening. Now, the idea behind this is that they're trying to bring in the inflationary scenario to a position in which that they are able to continue to conduct their monetary policy. The problem with this is that most people don't realize that when the inflationary scenario was running incredibly low over the previous 10 years, it failed the Federal Reserve. This is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. The Federal Reserve was looking for inflation and they could not find it. Right? Quantitative easing, 1, 2, 3, 4, printing of trillions of dollars, taking the Fed's balance sheet from $850 billion to over $4.5 trillion, failed to produce the inflationary scenario for the Federal Reserve. They took interest rates to zero interest rate policy. The adjustment of the Fed funds rates was no longer an effective tool, right? It didn't work for them anymore. So knowing that they had to use their words in order to conduct monetary policy, it made the monetary policy of adjusting of interest rates really second to their communications. And this is really important to understand because it's the communications that are now guiding the markets. Think about it. The Fed has hardly done anything with interest rate adjustments. There was a moment just 6 months ago, even less than that people were screaming at the top of their lungs saying that the Fed should take interest rates to zero in order to save the economy. And now what do you hear? That they are going to back off on the interest rate cuts, and there's even predictions and talk about them moving back up with the Fed funds rates. Quite opposite of what we are experiencing today. Now, I have to take consideration for just a second when I look back, because I have a tendency to say, okay, let's push this stuff away for just a minute and look at it from a distance. Because the adjustment of interest rates from the Fed funds rates takes 6 months to a year before it really starts to impact the economy. We have yet to experience any interest rate adjustments in reality within this economy. I don't know if people realize that. It'll take another few months to almost 6 months, a year from now, before we start feeling the real effects of the interest rate adjustments. Everything up until this point has been market perception. This is how the Federal Reserve is working this. So as we think about the Federal Reserve and their attempt to get to neutral, because that's where they want to get, people think, okay, well, they need to keep lowering interest rates till they get to neutral. If you have an elevated inflation expectation, then you are going to demand a bigger return on your capital investments. You will raise the interest rates, the inflation expectation, and the neutral interest rate simply by believing that there is going to be an inflationary scenario. The Federal Reserve can stand still, sit on their hands, do nothing, and have the neutral interest rate meet them. This is really how the monetary policy is going down. Most people don't see it this way. They have no idea about any of the stuff that I had just communicated on this video. They feel that the Federal Reserve is working off of a whim, data dependent off of every little piece of data that comes in, that they are making snap decisions on this economy, when ultimately this has been a very long, drawn out strategy. And it soon will change. They will move into a new monetary strategy, a long-term strategy that is different from the one that they are working with today. And most people, again, aren't seeing it for this long-term strategy. The idea that the Fed is going for moderately above 2% for some time with the inflationary scenario. What is inflation? 2.7, 2.3, 3.1, right? What is the official one? It's above 2%. Is it moderately above 2%? I don't know. What's moderately above 2%? There's no definition of that. I would only assume that we're somewhere above 2%. That makes it moderate. Again, how do you predict that? The Federal Reserve is mandated to keep unemployment low or full employment. We still have an incredibly tight jobs market, historically low unemployment. To me, I'm looking at this from what the Federal Reserve has said. They're at the sweet spot. This is exactly what they were looking for. And as I hear other people saying, man, something needs to be done and done quickly, and I'm thinking, what? This is exactly what the Fed was asking for. Not even asking for, telling you, right? This is what we are going to do. And here we are, and people are very surprised by it. I'm not surprised by it. And going into the future, I have to think about what it is that's going to happen with the neutral interest rate if we have an elevated inflation expectation. If you have threats of tariffs, threats of, I don't know what's going to come. All kinds of credible threats out there, and everybody wants to incorporate this into the strategy. And I'm thinking, that communication has a profound impact on the markets. Yeah. Nothing has to happen. All they have to do is just communicate about it. How many interest rate cuts were predicted at the end of 2023? Do you remember? It was a lot. The Federal Reserve had their dot plot set at 7 interest rate cuts or something like that. We hardly experienced any in 2024. There was predictions that it was going to be at 0 by 2025. Here we are talking about moving them up. Everybody's got it so confused, except those who are taking a look at it from the long-term expectations from the Federal Reserve strategy, knowing that they were trying to go for moderately above 2% for some time, using a flexible average inflation targeting regime that nobody understands. And this is why it is that markets are failing. Or failing to understand, or living in this hopium dream that there's going to be interest rate cuts going into the future to try and make borrowing costs cheaper, and this is going to somehow be a benefit to the people, not realizing that the only reason the Federal Reserve would be doing that is because we're going through economic downturn. It's complete opposite of what it is that people would want to experience. And so I think about this on a daily basis on what it is that people could do with their lives in order to try and understand the position that they need to take. And since most people are not seeing it in this fashion, they don't see it as the Federal Reserve is achieving their goals. They are achieving them right now. Most people say what the Fed is going to do. And it's like, this is it. This is what they're doing. This is what they are doing. They're not going to do anything. This is it. This is what they are doing. And knowing that they were going to do this a long time ago should not come as a surprise to anybody. Again, I don't look at the interest rate adjustments as being the monetary policy tool. It doesn't work for them anymore. Think about the communications about it. Totally works. It works way better than the actual interest rate adjustments do. All right, 13 minutes into this. Let's get some questions going. I'm going to be at, almost dropped it here. Let's see here. I got a few more minutes we can go. All right, the machine always grows. Hey, Tom, howdy all-nighter. Hey, Space Cowboy, at least we can be sure this guy isn't AI for now. No, and that's the thing. I will never do anything that is outside of being 100% honest with what it is that I'm doing, because I don't have any position in which that I can do anything else with, right? I have to be honest. That's one of the reasons why I do live streams instead of doing recorded videos. Even when I was doing recorded videos, I wouldn't edit them, right? Coming out here live, pulling this stuff out from the heart, giving you the information from what I truly believe has taken place. This is the only way that it can be done, right? I'm not going to fake it or try and make it better or, glamorous for you or anything like that. What's the point of that? The point is the information and the understanding, and that's it. Everything else is it's just fluff. All right, Truckerbot, I love the name. Fed Governor Waller's speech says he wants to continue to cut rates. His view on inflation is we are in disinflation and he doesn't expect inflation to rise. Yeah, and I mean, again, this is one of the speeches. I'm going to go over some of these things going into the future, but I think the idea behind it is that he wants to cut to try and get the Feds to neutral, right? If I remember right, because I just kind of perused that speech, I didn't read into it. But from what I was gathering, that they are trying to get to neutral, which the Fed funds rate is still above the neutral rate. If the inflation, and nobody knows what the inflation expectation is going to be going into the future, right? Like, a lot of people have this elevated inflation expectation right now, but that can quickly fade if we don't have the inflationary scenario that comes from it, which would be like tariffs, supply chain breakdowns, something of that nature. If that doesn't occur, then you might find that that inflation expectation quickly fades away. Or there could be a new credible threat of inflation that is beyond that of what we already understand that would then elevate the inflation again. But again, all of it is expectations, right? It's all about the market's perception of what it is that is coming to the future, and how all this communication out there is really, I mean, I'd imagine a lot of it is very valid, a lot of it's very credible, but until it actually comes to reality, it's just it's your perception, right? What do you think about buying silver now? Charles, I have always been a big buyer of silver, but I think it's the reasoning that you're buying it is the difference in the meaning that you're giving that. Some people want to buy it to protect themselves from an inflationary scenario. They want to protect themselves from their, protect their purchasing power, something of that nature. I don't look at it that way. Silver to me is an insurance policy. It gets me away from that third-party claim. If there was failure of government, failure of banking system, whatever, right? It's outside of that third party. It doesn't have that third party claim. It's up to me to protect it. It's in my possession. That is very unique. There's not a lot of stuff out there that can do that. So to me, insurance policy is something that you contribute to every single month, regardless of what the price is. Now, if you're looking to buy it so that you can make a price move, like, you're trying to increase your value of your wealth or something like that by buying low and selling high, I have found that silver is a very difficult thing to do with that, right? Because you never know how volatile and where it's going to go. When it ran up to $50 an ounce back in 2011, I thought I was the smartest person in the world. And instead of selling it, I held on to it, and it dropped all the way down into the teens. And I had lost, well, I didn't lose anything because I didn't sell it, but I had lost my opportunity to profit from it all. But at the time, I thought that the dollar was failing, right? It was just like, why would I get into dollars when I think the dollar is failing and the silver is the position to be in? So again, I just kind of exited out of the idea that I'm buying this to try and make money from. I use it as a third-party claim, or an insurance policy away from that third-party claim, and I'll probably always see it that way. I mean, if it goes up to $500 an ounce, don't get me wrong, I'll probably sell it, right? Or sell a bunch of it. The smoke got bad enough that we went to Irvine for the day. Yeah, California is burning up. Would you ever chase the algorithm? Like, try and make the algorithm pick up the video to spread it around so that more people would see it? No. Like, I mean, I guess, like, in kind of some ways, some of the title descriptions and stuff like that. Using thumbnails, that's kind of chasing algorithm. Otherwise, if you don't put those particular titles up there, if you don't use the thumbnails, if you don't have triggering things like clickbaiting stuff, the videos just, they're not that popular, right? I could put out the exact same content, title it with a very descriptive title, and get, a quarter of the views. Yes, it's a hedge. All right. Thank you very much, Jared, for the dollar. Dollars imperial circle globe needs higher rates and weaker dollars. Bunch of Jekyll jerks, huh? All right, 17 million cut to fire department in LA a few months ago. Dang, sure hurt. Inflation is way more than 2 or 3%. Mexico have a lot of silver. Unemployment numbers will spike this year. The Roadhouse fire is another example of why you need to be diversified and not put all your eggs into house. People will steal this content, no doubt. Oh yeah, I mean, here's the funny thing about it is that, not to encourage anybody to go do this because it was pretty annoying, but I mean, people steal my content all the time, go and develop a new a channel on some other platform or whatever, and then just, spread my videos out there. I even found somebody on TikTok who was basically kind of mimicking everything, just stealing my videos and reposting them, and had like 30,000 followers or something like that. I'm like, what in the world? So I reported them, not that anything's going to happen from it. Um, and that sucks. But then I also look at it, it was just like, the information is about being up to date. Like the daily videos is really the important stuff. A few weeks back, that's pretty good stuff as well. But the older it gets, the more out of date it becomes. And so really, I kind of look at it as like free advertising. There's only one uneducated economist. There's only one place you're going to get the current information from. And, this is it. And like, as annoying as it is to have that happen, whatever, just take the good with the bad, right? 225 year of layoffs. Okay. I'm going to learn thumbnails sooner or later. You know what I do all-nighter is I literally take a screenshot and then I go and edit the video with another title. So I have 2 titles to every video now. All right, congrats on surpassing 150K. You've earned it. Well, thank you so much, Hank. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's been a long road getting here, and it's nice hitting that milestone, that 150,000, subscribers. Once I hit that 100,000, like, you're doing YouTube. You're pretty much a legitimate YouTuber once you get up to like 50,000 subscribers or something like that. But you hit these milestones. You hit the 100,000 subscribers. You get that silver play button, and it's like this. It's like almost this overwhelming feeling that you get. It's like, man, I've really made it on here. I've really built this channel up. And then you hit that 150. Like the next one is like that 250,000, and then eventually the million. And I'm not in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry to do it. Like, if it takes, years to get there, it's cool because I'm enjoying the journey on the path to get there. And it's an overwhelming feeling. 150,000 subscribers. To think like, there was a time when I was surprised to have even 50,000 subscribers, let alone 150,000. And to be here now, it's just an amazing trip. Like I'm still like, how the hell did I get here? All right. Good morning. Yes, grats. Thank you so much. Altuus. What is this? Head and shoulder patterns tells me that the market is going down. Rock on. Well, thank you very much, John Doe. 3rd grader chit, but works. Okay. You never been a truck driver. Okay. Craziest thing I've seen so far this year is sunny day in Astoria in January. Yeah. We usually have 2 really nice weeks in February. January isn't really supposed to be a nice month, right? Usually January is pretty ugly. But there's 2 nice weeks in February that we get, and it always tricks everybody into believing that spring is on its way and they go out there and start gardening. All right, GMA Merkel, hello neighbor, have a great day, congrats. Oh, thank you. All right, hey Fanta. What did All Nighter say here? That's what I've learned. Take a pic and upload that from photos. Not sure how to write text on the pic. Got more exploring to do. You should be able to edit right in your phone's, right there in the phone's editing capabilities. It shouldn't be that difficult to drop it in there. That's what I do anyway. All right, 2 Big Macs on the way. Famber. All right. Best spring was April 2 years ago. Terrain was great for mountain biking. That's awesome. All right, 287 people watching. Pump the likes. Yes, please do. Hit that like button. By hitting the like button, the algorithm loves it, spreads the video around, helps the uneducated economist out. It's the easiest way to support the uneducated economist. Simon, given that not many new house permits are being given, applied for what makes you think that timber demand will increase even if there isn't a lot of supply? It's not what's going on right now, it's what's going to happen in the future, right? even though you see permits falling, there's going to come a moment in which that changes, right? Permits aren't going to continue to fall forever. At some point they hit a bottom, and then there's a reversal to that. When that happens, you're going to start seeing the home builder sentiment picking up. Now, the reason why the permit issuance and starts would be picking up is because the buyer traffic is now coming into the game. Right now, builders are somewhat like confident about the environment, except for the buyer traffic portion of it, which is incredibly negative. And that's understandable considering the elevated interest rates. So if there is a time in the future in which that the interest rate adjustments to the point that it comes down to the point that it sparks that mortgage demand again. And I was we did an interview yesterday with Mike Zuber, and I think he was saying that it was somewhere around 5 or 6%, 6.5%, that there's, I forget exactly what the number is. I don't think it was 5. I think he said it's 6.5% or something like that. When mortgages reaches a particular interest rate level, it really starts to increase the demand for mortgages. Right? So there is a particular interest rate on the mortgage that once it comes down to that level, then it really starts encouraging buyers to come out of the woodwork to start buying those homes. So if we ever have a sustained level of that particular interest rate that brings those buyers out of the or into the market, out of the sidelines, so to speak, then I would imagine that would start getting the builders to say, okay, here we go. We got the buyers here. Let's get going. And then they start taking out the permits and start, getting the new construction underway. How long of a period that takes? Because you really have to, take into consideration that the moment that somebody says, okay, I want to pull the trigger on building a house, unless they have the plan set up, the builder set up, all the things, like all the logistics things constantly in a roll, waiting for their opportunity, they usually have to start that process saying, okay, let's do it. And then from the time that they decide to do that to the time they actually are able to get the loan, secure the contractor, secure all the things that they need to do, it may be a very, long time down the road. There are people out there who could bust a move right away. Like, there are contractors out there who build all in cash. If they're building a spec home, so to speak, they are able to buy a piece of land, get the permitting, get the, utilities out there and get moving right away. You never know. They may be able to decide to build a house and finish that house within 3 months, 6 months, something like that, where most people may end up having to wait 6 months before they even get to the point where they can get the permit, right? So again, like, this is going to be a very difficult thing to try and understand why it's occurring the way it is occurring due to the lag time that is happening from the bullwhip effect of past experience within the completions and the drop in permit issuance. So as people are anticipating, like, say, a move in the mortgage market or in the housing market that may have looked similar to the past, you have to take into consideration that we had this oversupply, undersupply, and this, drawn out backlog of incompleted homes that are now coming into completion at the same time we have this permit drop, or permit and start drop. Those two things didn't really occur previous to COVID, right? So this is a new experience that we're going into. So it's hard to predict what it is that's going to happen. All right, let's go take a look at the super chat here. Ronnie with the $1.99. Thoughts on local currencies like gold backs? It's the problem with anything outside of a fiat currency like the US dollar is that Gresham's law is going to kick in. So Gresham's law is going to state that good or a bad currency chases out good currency. So when you have something like a gold back, right? And for those of you who are not familiar with gold back currencies, gold backs are literally, they look like a piece of currency, like almost like a dollar bill, but they're made of gold. Like, they're literally, the piece itself is gold, but it looks like a, like a dollar bill, so to, in appearance. There's no difference between a gold back and, say, a gold coin, right? It's the same thing. It's still a piece of gold that you're trying to trade. So let me ask you, if you came to me and you said, hey man, what do you have for sale? And I'm like, hey man, I got this here apple for sale, right? And you ask me, and it's like, okay, will you take dollars and will you take gold? And I look at the dollars and I look at the gold and I say, you know what, I'll take either one of those. Are you really gonna hand me that gold back? Are you going to hand me that gold coin or that gold backed currency? Most likely you're going to keep that and spend the dollar, right? Because the good currency is something that you're going to want to hoard on to and spend the bad currency out there into the economy. This will happen every time. So Gresham's law, and Gresham noticed this, like, what is it, Robert Gresham? Back in like the 1500s with coin clipping, right? So back in the day when you had a silver coin, people used to cut the edge of the coin off of there, clip the very edge of the coin, keep that little bit of silver for themselves, and then spend the coin at face value into the economy. Well, pretty soon, all the unclipped coins were hoarded and kept because they were more valuable, there was more silver content, and the clipped coins went into circulation. So this is what Robert Gresham had noticed. This is where Gresham's law kicks in. Now, he didn't come up with Gresham's law. It was somebody else who was observing Gresham's observation of this coin clipping taking place and then coined that term, Gresham's law, because of that. But really, if you think about any good currency competing against a bad currency, it would always get hoarded away. Nobody's going to want to, like, give up their good currency and keep the bad currency for themselves. That doesn't make any sense. So no, I don't see where gold-backed currencies are going to make any difference inside of anything. There are people out there who may use it just for novelty, kind of like, hey, it's fun to do it. But as far as like a real, like, economic basis using gold-backed currencies, the United States will never go back to that and experience the elevated lifestyle that we do today. We have to understand that we do not have the ability to maintain the elevated lifestyle off of the production and savings. We have this elevated lifestyle because we are a debt-based currency that issues out debt, spreads it around the world, and then we consume the world's production. Right? This is a very unique position. It gives us a very luxurious life and conveniences that are not something that is to be taken lightly, that we can maintain, right? If we lose the ability to issue out the world's world reserve currency, we lose the ability to have the safe and liquid asset that everybody is in demand of, we lose our way of life altogether. And I don't care if you have gold-backed currencies or not, the only people who are going to have it are the most elite people. Everybody else is going to suffer in poverty. So it's not a good thing. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm in a position in which that if we did go back to a gold currency or something, or had a complete failure of the dollar, I think I could actually do pretty well in that. Like, I've thought about it and positioned myself in a way that may be able to take good advantage of that situation. I wouldn't know until it happens, but I'm down for it. Let's do it, but I don't think it's a good idea. For most people out there, will end up suffering in misery and poverty because of it. All right, what time is it? All right, I got a few more minutes here. We can keep going. Yeah, I'm an underwriter for property insurance, so I'm going to check y'all if you say something crazy. Go for it. I think that's a great idea. The undergrowth gets burned off in affluent areas, so to rebuild whole block estates. The U.S. is living a high life built deficit. Lots of laugh and laugh out loud. Andrea, let's get in touch. Check my channel. Link coming. There you go. What if the price of gold was way higher? If premiums to produce a gold back was around 2%, it could possibly, if it was forced to happen by failure of confidence. Well, okay, so let's take in that consideration. You'd have to have the failure of confidence, right? That's the whole point of it. Like, fiat currency is based all on confidence that you are going to get paid, right? The U.S. Treasury is the safe and liquid asset because there is zero chance of default. People have, there might be some people out there who believe that the United States Treasury will fail, but the world, for the most part, considers it a safe and liquid asset with zero chance of default because the United States has a printing press that can always pay its debts. Now, that purchasing power from that dollar to pay those debts may not be there, right? You may not guarantee the purchasing power, but you can always guarantee that the U.S. Treasuries will get paid, zero chance of default. And so that is something that is very different that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration, right? Once that fails, okay, then all bets be off, right? The whole monetary system fails, and you can have the rise of a good currency like gold back or whatever. But there is no transitioning into that, right? There's no transition that can take place. If we had a gold-backed currency in the United States, what we would do is import stuff, export gold, and we would all live in poverty and misery. It's not a good thing. If we were a production savings nation, I would be totally down for it. I'd be like, yeah, let's do it, man. We would have an awesome standard of living if we had production and savings and a gold-backed currency and importing all the gold. We already did that. We did that during the 60s, 70s, and then we severed ourselves from the gold standard and kept the gold and said, hey, if you want to keep using money, then use US dollars. We'll issue out all these US treasuries, and we'll just buy the production of the world and issue out dollars out there. And if you don't like it, too bad, right? What else are you going to do? And this is the situation we are now in, right? So like being a consumer nation, what we produce here in this nation is a consumer. And the only way you can have a consumer in a debt-based currency is to issue out more debt. And if you issue out more debt, you're going to have more separation between the rich and the poor, and the problems are going to get worse, right? There's no fixing this. It's just not fixable. So understanding that it's not fixable then gives you the ability to say, okay, I'm not going to anticipate somebody coming in to fix it or make it better. I have to figure out what it is that I need to do in this condition in order to make my life better. All right, moving on. Don't matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. That's right, Wayne. We all are. I mean, as long as you stay hopeful, you stay, in the, like, to me, it doesn't matter what your position is so long as you're not living in fear. Like, they want you in fear. They, the government, the powers that be, the elite, everybody wants you living in fear. And if you live in fear, then you're easily controlled. And the problem with living in fear is that it's a negative emotion, a negative feeling, and therefore you attract negative things into your life. I know, because I used to be a huge conspiracy theorist who thought the New World Order was coming to take everything away from me and destroy the entire world. And that very well still could happen. I'm just not scared of them. Like, I'm not scared of them anymore. There was a time that I think I was. I mean, I didn't maybe think about it at the time that I was, but my behavior certainly reflected a fearful mentality that then left me in a position that was very compromised and not successful. I don't live in that fear anymore. So now I look at things as nothing more than opportunity. Even if it seems heavy and difficult and an obstacle, it's not to me. It's more of a challenge and another opportunity to take advantage of. That's the way I see it on everything out there, no matter what it is. Right? Even bad things that happen usually end up in the long run being a good thing. Right? It severed that tie that you needed to get severed from so you can move on to another opportunity that finally is better than the one that you were facing. You just didn't see it at the time. Right? And that's mostly fear that holds people back from that. What time is it? Alrighty, guys, I'm going to call it quits. Let me get one more comment in here, or a couple, and then we'll move on. Strike the like. Yes, thank you, C130. I really appreciate that, man. Wayne says, I really dig sonic booms. I was in the USN flight deck. I got to feel them pretty often. That's cool. Andrea, exactly. All-nighter hiders. It cracks me up. It cracks me up. There we go. Love and peace. Bird. Danger, danger. I fear Nickelback. Right? Trash can man, they're coming to take me away. Haha, they're coming to take me away. ZN, 0% chance of default, but hypothetically, is there any time or circumstance that we'd have to default? Yeah, well, ultimately, every time they go into a bailout or quantitative easing, that's essentially admitting that they defaulted. Like, because they can't pay the bill. Right? So they have to go into ever-increasing amounts of money expansion in order to continue to pay the bills. So every time that we have quantitative easings or something of that nature, it's an admission that we have defaulted. But you don't default because the bill gets paid. Right? You're just going to get paid back with devalued dollars. And this is exactly what Alan Greenspan was saying, that there is a 0 chance of default, but they cannot guarantee the purchasing power of those dollars. So I don't anticipate any kind of default coming from the United States. Not ever. Not never. Right? Now, I do see the possibility of the failure of the purchasing power within the dollar itself. But that again, there's also other things that I'm looking at, not the actions of the United States, but the demand for dollars outside of the United States that is far bigger than anybody could ever possibly imagine, as there are debts written in dollars that are due in dollars that did not come from our government, from our corporations, from our banking systems, from our people, right? It doesn't have anything to do with us. People outside of the United States are creating a huge demand for dollars, right? And they are going to demand those dollars to pay those debts off. That right there is going to lead me to believe that the demand for dollars is going to continue to grow going into the future, and that they are not going to be abandoning the dollar. They are looking for other ways of doing transactions, including I think the Federal Reserve is actually encouraged by that idea. That if the rest of the world could figure out some other way to start doing transactions instead of using the US dollar, the Federal Reserve would then be in a position in which that they would not be forcing the United States government into an unsustainable debt path. See, the Federal Reserve is trying to provide the world with the demand. The world is demanding the liability of the Federal Reserve. That's the dollars. They have written debts that are due in dollars. That demand then forces the Federal Reserve to figure out some way to get those dollars out there to the world. The only way to get dollars out there to the world is to buy an asset. The asset that they buy is the government's debt, the United States treasuries. By buying those U.S. treasuries, they are forcing the government into an unsustainable debt path. They know this is going to continue to destroy the United States if they were on this path, if they continue on this way. So if the world is still writing debts that are due in dollars instead of de-dollarizing and moving into something else, it will literally force the Federal Reserve to destroy the government. Right? See, I don't know if people look at it this way. If people around the world continue to write debts that are due in dollars, it's going to force the Federal Reserve to provide the world with that liability, their liability to pay those debts off, and that will force them to buy the U.S. Treasury debt, forcing the government into an unsustainable debt path, destroying them. This is the problem they face. The BRICS nations and de-dollarization is a benefit to the Federal Reserve. They do not have to come up with the liabilities if they are figuring out some other way to do transactions. Right? And it's not like it's going to relieve the problem, the Federal Reserve. It just might ease the pain that they are experiencing from this just a little bit. Right? And I don't know how many people see it this way. Like, I don't know if Brent Johnson or Jeff Snyder talk about it like that, but this is the way I see it. And why it is that the Federal Reserve is scrambling to figure out a way that they can continue to expand the money supply without forcing the United States into an unsustainable debt path. Which leads me to believe that they are probably going to, at some point in the future, start to buy the sovereign debt of a foreign nation, putting it on the balance sheet and issuing out the liabilities. I can't imagine what that would look like. They already have the legal authority to do this. So, again, like, my mind can spin on the possibilities, but I would only assume that the Federal Reserve would want total control, and in that sense, we would have to be in digital currencies at that point. All right, that might have been a little too much. Uneducated Economist, you guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. Everybody go hit that like button one more time if you haven't hit it. We got 291 people watching with $2.99 in super chats because you guys are always so supportive of this channel. And thank you for that, hitting that like button. That's the easiest way to support the Uneducated Economist, is by liking, sharing, commenting, and doing all the other things that triggers the algorithm to spread the video around. Congrats, doing a great job giving the Fed all these powers. Congress doing a great job giving the Fed all these powers. I don't know if necessarily Congress is giving the Fed all these powers as much as the Federal Reserve, I think, already had a lot of these powers to begin with. Right? Being given the ability to issue out the nation's currency is almost setting that nation up for failure. Right? At some point, there's going to be issues with the debt, accumulation and trying to pay it back. There's very little doubt in my mind that at some point the United States monetary policy will fail. I don't see it happening yet, right? It's only a matter of time because it's an inevitability. When fiat currencies, they will always fail. But if you can figure out a way to get the cash out, if you can figure out a way to go into negative interest rates, if you can tokenize, you have opportunity that had never existed in the past. And so how much longer can it continue on? This is anybody's guess, right? Because we've never had these other components available to us before. All righty, keep an eye out on Mike Zuber's channel. I'm not sure when he's going to get the video uploaded or if he already has, but we did a great interview yesterday. Well over an hour long, covered so many topics. It was just wonderful. So go and check out Mike Zuber's channel, one rental at a time. We're going to be in Vegas speaking at the Uneducated Economist, right? We're going to go down to Vegas. We're going to do a speaking engagement down there. He actually has positioned me for the keynote speaking spot. So Saturday, 5 to 6, right? Going to be up there on stage, given the what for of the credible threat theories and all that. So if you happen to be in the area or you want to check out Mike Zuber's conference, economic conference, which is probably one of the better conferences that I've ever been to. It's not as, I shouldn't say it's not, it's wonderful, right? It's a wonderful thing. It's not as like, say, big and prestigious as something like the Rebel Capitalist is, but the event, in my opinion, was by far the best energy, the best networking, the best information. Like, Mike Zuber puts on probably one of the better economic conferences that I've been to. So it's like, I would encourage everybody to check it out. All right, saw a TikTok yesterday about the Cantillon effect. It's starting to spread. Yeah, and I think that, once people start realizing it and seeing it for what it really is, then they can start recognizing it more in their daily lives, in their personal lives, in the business, in the nation's, in the nation's economy. You can start recognizing it more for yourself. I think there's going to be a lot of people who misunderstand the Cantillon effect, and that's cool as long as you understand it for what it really is. And now I left a link down in the description. Hopefully I left a link down in the description to the Cantillon essay that you can buy from Amazon. I get a little commission off of that, so by buying that essay off of Amazon, you're supporting the Uneducated Economist, but you do not have to buy the essay off of Amazon. You can go and get the essay for free at the Mises Institute. So just type in Cantillon essay on economic theory into the search engine. It should pop up. You can download the PDF for free, read the thing for yourself, internalize that information, and then you'll be able to recognize a lot of the situations that we are facing now is something that we have experienced in the past. Now, it is different, right? Because he wrote that essay hundreds of years ago. He's talking about horses and wagons. Today we have cell phones and airplanes. It's a much different scenario, but the underlying economic forces are still quite relevant. So, alrighty, guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all night for posting the link. Whoops. Sorry, guys. Come back here. All right. Oops. All right. So, lost you there for a second. Isn't that what Simon just said? All right. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for being here. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.